Mission 100, Day 65, Part 1, the Book of Judith from the Old Testament. Judith chapter 8. Arphaxad fortifies Ecbatana. It was the 12th year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, who ruled over the Assyrians in the great city of Nineveh. In those days, Arphaxad ruled over the Medes in Ecbatana. He built walls around Ecbatana with hewn stones 3 cubits thick and 6 cubits long. He made the walls 70 cubits high and 50 cubits wide. At its gates he raised towers 100 cubits high and 60 cubits wide at the foundations. He made its gates 70 cubits high and 40 cubits wide to allow his armies to march out in force and his infantry to form their ranks. Then King Nebuchadnezzar made war against King Arphaxad in the great plain that is on the borders of Ragau. There rallied to him all the people of the hill country, and all those who lived along the Euphrates, the Tigris, and the Hydaspes, and on the plain Arioch, king of the Elamians. Thus many nations joined the forces of the Chaldeans. Nebuchadnezzar issues ultimatum. Then Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, sent messengers to all who lived in Persia and to all who lived in the west, those who lived in Cilicia and Damascus, Lebanon and Anti-Lebanon, and all who lived along the sea coast, and those among the nations of Carmel and Gilead and Upper Galilee, and the great plain of Esdraelon, and all who were in Samaria and its towns, and beyond the Jordan as far as Jerusalem and Bethany and Shelos and Kadesh and the river of Egypt and Taphanes and Rameses and the whole land of Goshen, even beyond Tanis and Memphis, and all who lived in Egypt as far as the borders of Ethiopia. But all who lived in the whole region disregarded the summons of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, and refused to join him in the war, for they were not afraid of him, but regarded him as only one man. So they sent back his messengers empty handed and in disgrace. Then Nebuchadnezzar became very angry with this whole region, and swore by his throne and kingdom that he would take revenge on the whole territory of Cilicia and Damascus and Syria, that he would kill with his sword also all the inhabitants of the land of Moab, and the people of Ammon, and all Judea, and every one in Egypt, as far as the coasts of the two seas. Arphaxad is defeated. In the 17th year he led his forces against King Arphaxad, and defeated him in battle, overthrowing the whole army of Arphaxad, and all his cavalry, and all his chariots. Thus he took possession of his towns, and came to Ecbatana, captured its towers, plundered its markets, and turned its glory into disgrace. He captured Arphaxad in the mountains of Ragaur, and struck him down with his spears, thus destroying him once and for all. Then he returned to Nineveh, he and all his combined forces, a vast body of troops, and there he and his forces rested and feasted for 120 days. Judith chapter 2. The expedition against the west. In the 18th year, on the 22nd day of the first month, there was talk in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, about carrying out his revenge on the whole region, just as he had said. He summoned all his ministers and all his nobles, and set before them his secret plan, and recounted fully with his own lips all the wickedness of the region. They decided that every one who had not obeyed his command should be destroyed. When he had completed his plan, Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, called Holofernes, the chief general of his army, second only to himself, and said to him, "Thus says the great king, the Lord of the whole earth, leave my presence and take with you men confident in their strength, 120,000 foot soldiers and 12,000 cavalry. March out against all the land to the west, because they disobeyed my orders. Tell them to prepare earth and water, for I am coming against them in my anger, and will cover the whole face of the earth with the feet of my troops, to whom I will hand them over to be plundered. Their wounded shall fill their ravines and gullies, and the swelling river shall be filled with their dead. I will lead them away captive to the ends of the whole earth. You shall go and seize all their territory for me in advance, They must yield themselves to you, and you shall hold them for me until the day of their punishment. But to those who resist, show no mercy, but hand them over to slaughter, and plunder throughout your whole region. For as I live, and by the power of my kingdom, what I have spoken I will accomplish by my own hand. And you take care not to transgress any of your Lord's commands, but to carry them out exactly as I have ordered you. Do it without delay. Campaign at Holofernes. So Holofernes left the presence of his lord and summoned all the commanders, generals, and officers of the Assyrian army. He mustered the picked troops by divisions as his lord had ordered him to do, 120,000 of them, together with 12,000 archers on horseback, and he organized them as a great army in Mashaled for a campaign. He took along a vast number of camels and donkeys and mules for transport, and innumerable sheep and oxen and goats for food, also ample rations for everyone, and a huge amount of gold and silver from the royal palace. There he set out with his whole army to go ahead of King Nebuchadnezzar, and to cover the whole face of the earth to the west with their chariots and cavalry and picked foot soldiers. Along with them went a mixed crowd like a swarm of locusts, like the dust of the earth, a multitude that could not be counted. They marched for 3 days from Nineveh to the plain of Bechteleth, and camped opposite Bechteleth, near the mountain that is on the north of Upper Cilicia. From there Holofernes took his whole army, the infantry, cavalry, and chariots, and went up into the hill country. He ravaged Puth and Lud, and plundered all the Racites and the Ishmaelites on the border of the desert, south of the country of the Chaldeans. Then he followed the Euphrates and passed through Mesopotamia, and destroyed all the fortified towns along the brook Abron as far as the sea. He also seized the territory of Cilicia and killed everyone who resisted him. Then he came to the southern borders of Japheth, facing Arabia. He surrounded all the Midianites and burned their tents and plundered their sheepfolds. Then he went down into the plain of Damascus during the wheat harvest, and burned all their fields, and destroyed their flocks and herds, and sacked their towns, and ravaged their lands, and put all their young men to the sword. So fear and dread of him fell upon all the people who lived along the sea coast at Sidon and Tyre, and those who lived in Sur and Osina, and all who lived in Jamnia, those who lived in Azotus and Ascalon, feared him greatly. Judith chapter 3. Entreaties for peace. They therefore sent messengers to him to sue for peace in these words: We, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar the great king, lie prostrate before you. Do with us whatever you will. See, our buildings and all our land and all our wheat fields and our flocks and herds and all our encampments lie before you. Do with them as you please. Our towns and their inhabitants are also your slaves. Come and deal with them as you see fit. The men came to Holofernes and told him all this. Then he went down to the sea coast with his army and stationed garrisons in the fortified towns, and took picked men from them as auxiliaries. These people and all in the countryside welcomed him with garlands and dances and tambourines. Yet he demolished all their shrines and cut down their sacred groves, for he had been commissioned to destroy all the gods of the land, so that all nations should worship Nebuchadnezzar alone, and all their dialects and tribes should call upon him as a god. Then he came towards Esdraelon near Dothan, facing the great ridge of Judea. He camped between Geba and Scythopolis, and remained for a whole month in order to collect all the supplies for his army. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.